Welcome. My name is Ilya Tovbis. I'm the Artistic and Managing Director of J by J, the festival that you've hopefully been enjoying all week and can continue to until tomorrow. We are of course here for Asia, one of my absolute favorite films in the festival, and we have a great panel. Two out of the three guests are here with us, and one will be here very, very soon as well. I'm going to introduce them briefly, and then just one quick housekeeping note before we get into the core of the discussion. We have audiences, and quite large ones, I expect, experiencing this conversation across two platforms. They're exactly the same. Don't have a fear of missing out if you're on one or the other. They're both cast there. If you're on our Eventive or streaming platform, you can ask your questions in the chat. If you are experiencing this through Zoom, then please use the Q&A function to ask questions. Put them in. You can start putting them in now or put them in throughout the conversation. I'll kick the conversation off with one or two of my own, but mostly we're going to be leaning on the audience. I know you're going to want to connect with these amazing artists and have lots of questions from this film. So we have with us the director, Ruthy Pribar, who graduated with honors from the Sam Spiegel School in 2012. Her short films, Last Calls and The Caregiver, screened at numerous festivals worldwide. In Asia, was chosen for the Cannes Festival Residency Program. It is her first feature film. It was slated originally to have its international premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival, though like many others, including our own, COVID and the pandemic had slightly different plans. It was recently awarded 9 Ophires. For those that don't know, that's Israel's version of the Oscars. And one of those Ophires is for Best Picture, which makes it Israel's contender for the Best Foreign film at this year's Oscars. We'll find out in the coming months whether it's shortlisted and then hopefully nominated. I certainly hope that it is. Other prizes include for both of the people on this call. So amongst the 9 are also for Best Cinematography and for Best Actress for Alena Yiv, who just joined us. Alena is an Israeli actress and director. In 2010, she starred in the Israeli TV series Blue Natalie as Yulia and was nominated for Best Actress in the drama series by the Israeli TV Academy. Her career progressed after she starred in Dina Tzvi Riklis's movie The Fifth Heaven. For those that like Dina Tzvi Riklis's work, we're actually showing her newest film, Ma Barot, this year, so check that out as well. And she's also known for the TV miniseries Hatzoref, where she played Henya, Marina and Heroine, and many more. And then last but not least, we're also joined by Daniella Nowitz, who is an award-winning cinematographer who is working internationally and now also in Israel. She has shot narrative features and television in 4 continents and speaks 5 languages. Her first feature film, Live Cargo, which was in 2017, was praised for cinematography in the New York Times, The Village Voice, IndieWire, and Variety named it one of the most evocatively shot debut films in recent memory. She is an alumnus of the AFI Cinematography MFA program, and her work has screened at Sundance, Tribeca, AFI, and lots of other major festivals. Before we get going, thank you to the 3 of you for joining us, taking the time, and also for creating this beautiful, beautiful film.
Thank you. We're so happy to be here.
Great. So I'll start kind of with the easy, obvious question, and then it'll probably not get much harder, but maybe a little bit more difficult from there, which is just how all of you got involved in this project. And I think the place to start really is Ruthy, because in addition to directing, you also wrote the screenplay. How did this story develop? How did it come to you? And how did it eventually get executed and come to us as an audience?
Okay, so I started writing the script quite a long time ago. It was 7 years ago when it initially started. It was after a few years of dealing with a very close person in my life that has died, and my thoughts and my feelings about that, and about watching someone, a loved one, fade away in front of your eyes. So this is where I came to the project from. And I was just thinking how it can be done differently. How for me, looking at someone that you love so much, how can you be there and not just stand by their side, but just be with them at the moment? And this is something I wanted the film to explore. And this is how I got to these 2 characters, a mother and daughter, that are in a way start out very separately. Each of them has their own identity in life, and they live it very separately, and somehow they through this illness and through the time that they spent together, they learn to be together, to love each other, um, to the point where they are, in a way, inseparable. Although they do separate by the end of the film, but their connection and the bond that they share by the end of it is it will last forever. So this is, in short, how I got to this story.
Great. And Alena, how did you get involved with the project?
First of all, I have to say that my first question to Ruthy was, after I read the script, it's exactly what you asked. I really wanted to know two things. First of all, yeah, why are you dealing with such a hard subject? And the second, why Russian immigrant? It was very surprising that someone completely have no Russian roots, have very exact, very in a lot of details. They have a completely understanding the immigrants, the Russian immigrants, the mother and daughter. I was very surprised about it. But in all of this, when I read first time the script, I really felt very complete about what is it about. So it's making very, very clear what I'm gonna working about. And in the other way, it was really can see how it can be deep in so many ways, and it's really pleasure for the actor that you can in something very understanding what the way you're going to go through, and in other way there's kind of a lot of work that can be deep more and more as much as I want the directing. So it's I really enjoy it.
Great. And Danielle, can you talk about your involvement, how you got attached to the project?
Yeah, Ruti and I worked together on a short film called The Caregiver. And I was living in LA at the time, and I would come to Israel to visit family maybe once a year, once every 2 years. And I really wanted to shoot something in Israel. I hadn't shot something here. And so I asked this director that I know to introduce me to a few directors, probably most of them women in retrospect. And Luti and I just really hit it off. We had a great conversation. We loved all the same movies. We had this kind of similar vision. And I remember even at our first meeting, Luti, you told me about Asia, and I was really excited about it. I was like, this sounds like an amazing feature. And so then when Luti had a short come up, she was like, do you think you might be here from LA? Maybe we could time it with your visit. And we did. And we had a great experience and worked really well together. And so it just kind of seemed like the obvious thing to continue working together. And I hope that we always work together, honestly.
So I want to turn to something that Alena brought up, which is a major aspect of the film beyond obviously the unconditional love between mother and daughter and the difficulty of their medical situation and a few other things, was the Russian identity, which was very strong. Can we talk a little bit about, Ruthy, what interested you in that? What made you pick that? Obviously, there are quite a lot of Russians in Israel, and it's a major community and identity. And then, Alena, perhaps you can talk, or maybe Ruthy will cover this, about whether you helped to fill in any of the details there about what that life is really like.
Okay, so when I started thinking about the film, I knew I wanted it to be about mother and daughter that bonded, like we talked about before. So there's something that is very Israeli, which is we all have like a big families, and we all get together, and we have a large community that is always part of our lives. It's something very common here, and a lot of circles of family and friends. And I wanted these two women to be on their own and sort of separated from the rest of the people around them. So that's why I chose for them to be immigrants. And it just made a lot of sense for them to be Russian because there's such a large Russian community. And since I don't belong to, I'm not a Russian immigrant, I very early on, like 2 months into writing the script, I understood that I have to learn Russian to do this because I knew the film was going to be in Russian. So I went on and studied Russian, which turned out to be not so easy as I thought it would be. And it was actually the first language that I learned from scratch. I mean, English I knew because I lived in the US for a while when I was a child, and Hebrew, I grew up with it, but Russian was actually a completely new language to me. And then I realized it's so difficult to learn a new language. Speaking of which, Daniella knows so many. So
Not Russian though, easier language.
yeah, not Russian. So I learned some Russian, which helped me a lot in the shooting and with the script. But I have to say I don't know Russian at all. I just know the basics and I can understand. Like if it's written, I can read it out. And with that, I came to the shooting. And I have to say, like, this is a bit technical, but I think it will. The film is in the film, Asya speaks in Russian almost all of the time when she speaks to Vika, and Vika answers in Hebrew, and sometimes they switch, and sometimes, and I think by the end of the film, Asya speaks a bit more Hebrew, and Vika speaks a bit more Russian, and they sort of find this common ground, and they learn to interact with one another in a different way. So the language is like another layer in the film that you learn about the characters through the language that they're speaking and through the way they're communicating with one another. And this brought a lot more to work with into the script, which was for me very interesting. And Alena, she was a huge part of that because we only translated the script when she was cast as Asya. So all the lines of the script were basically translated with her and another translator, and we found the right words for her. So it wasn't like it was, of course, the text remained the same, but the way it was spoken, it's what suited her as a person. So she could relate to it, I think, a lot easier than if she would just have been handed in the text. And I think she can probably say more.
What I also think is really great for the choosing the Russian immigrants, it's also, all the connection between the people, it's very different, Russian and Israeli people, because Israeli people are very hot, they're speaking straight from the heart and very emotional. And, Russian is a cold way, and you're thinking a lot of times before saying something very, very close to someone. So for this script, I think it was really, really good choice because it's just very natural for Russian people not to be close too much. But and then when you close, it's really kind of completely into it. So it's really suitable for Russian people.
Yeah, I have to say, as someone who is not at all Israeli, but as a Russian immigrant, as a young boy to America myself, I thought that it was quite a credible portrayal as far as I can speak personally. It was very touching. And then when you mentioned the language being almost like its own character or its own theme, and the switching between it, to me, one of the most touching moments was the scene before the last scene when they have the phone call, which is one of the first times that I noticed anyway, that both of them were speaking Russian when they were telling each other that they loved each other and missed one another and that they'd be home soon, because otherwise it does tend to almost always be cross language. So that was very touching. Indeed. And one thing there, and I think this will go a little bit to Daniella's role, is one of the great strengths of the film, and I'm far from the first to remark on this, but something that stuck with me is just how both economical and sparse, but also subtle and nuanced the film is. It manages to be at the same time very sort of utilitarian and straightforward, but not in a way that doesn't allow you to sort of glom onto the details and get a deeper sense of life. And I think some of that is a credit to the script, a lot of it's a credit to the acting, but also a good deal must be the way it's shot and the style. So I'm wondering if Daniella and Ruthy could talk a little bit about the vision, and then also how, again, that was executed, sort of the natural lighting in Jerusalem, the inside scenes, some of the geometry and framing I thought were just beautiful throughout.
Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the thing that was really important to us was that this character is very lonely. She's in this place. There's all these other immigrants, but she has no connections to anybody except for her daughter. And even the connections with her daughter is a little bit unstable. And so we always try to contrast interior and exterior space. You'll notice there's shots of her looking out the window, and then there's 100 windows in the background, but there's no people in them. And so it kind of stresses her loneliness, showing how there's this world, it's out of her reach. There are other people, there are neighbors, there is a sense of community, but as an immigrant and as a single mother, she doesn't connect to those communities. And also the fact that she makes very difficult decisions as a mother that are very not standard decisions, I think isolates her further. And so for me, looking at every location and every set, there was always like, how can we stress the loneliness? How can we stress, the conflict between wanting to belong to something but not belonging? And I think that the reason, the film is simple, quote unquote, I know what you mean, is that it really is about the relationship of these two women, and at the end of the day, my job more than anything is to photograph these two women's faces most of the time. It isn't a movie that sets out with a big chase scene or big bravado. It's about the acting and the dialogue. And so, as a cinematographer, you can take your places to shine, but you also have to give a stage to what's actually important, which is the storytelling here.
And I mean, another thing that I think is you can see it very clearly in the film, is that it deals with a lot of difficult subject matters, and it's not always easy to watch. But what we did want out of the film is to see beauty, even in the dark parts, even in the rough scenes, because I think this is what the movie talks about. It talks about looking into your life, and even when you are in the darkest place, you find what is meaningful and what you can take with you, and how to make the best of what you have. So I think the same goes to the cinematography. Let's see, Asia is living in a rough neighborhood, but we always wanted to show how there is beauty in it, or even in the last scene that is very difficult, where they're saying goodbye to each other. The way the light comes in, it's like uplifting. It's not dark at all. It's full of light and love and compassion. And you feel that compassion in the cinematography. And this is what I love about Danielle's work, that you can really feel that the camera, how compassionate it is towards the characters when you watch them. And I mean, it's really incredible for me how she was able to do that.
And if I could add, I think part of what's beautiful about this story is that you have this estranged mother and daughter, but that kind of reach a new height of their relationship through tragedy. And so it's a very sad story, and it's very upsetting, and but at the same time, there's something very happy about it, about this relationship that is reforged and how they find each other. And so there's also beauty in the sadness of the story, and so that needs to be reflected in the way it's shot.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn to audience questions shortly, so do feel free, if you're in the audience, again, use the chat or Q&A function to enter those. And I see one question that seems only partial from Ella and Mike. So if you're typing, maybe retype that one, because I only see the first three letters of it in there. So please do re-ask that. One thing I wanted to sort of note and ask about, and perhaps it's less of an emphasis for you, or perhaps more, so feel free to take it in a direction, is the cast and crew overall, much like the story, is very female centric, and it's made up nearly entirely of women. There's, I think, one producer who's a man in terms of the principal crew, and just about no one else. How intentional was that decision, and what effect does it have? What did it bring to the production?
Well, it's definitely on purpose. Not in the way like I wanted to have the best possible crew members on set. And I mean, for me as a female director that's working in the film industry, and I'm very aware of the inequality that is faced in the film industry, and how much it's man dominated. So I knew that once I get the chance to make my own film, I will want to work with women. And I think there are such amazing women out there that are just waiting for the opportunity to shine. So it was very easy to have to get these incredible women to the film, because there's just so many of them out there. And I think, like, at the end of the day, it's just like any other film set, and we worked very well together because everybody was good at what they did. And on another level, which is this is something else, right? But it does have to do with what we're talking about. I mean, as a woman, and I think Alona and Daniela will agree with me, you just get a lot of sexist remarks along the way. I think it doesn't matter even what profession you're in. It's probably everywhere you go. And when you're on a set that has so many women on it, you're bound to have much less sexist remarks. So it made the job easier. It made me happier to go every day to shoot the film, and I just enjoyed having these wonderful women making this film with me. And I don't know. You say how you felt about it. I don't know.
And I don't know if there's ever been an Israeli film that has had such a predominantly female. I mean, you tell me, Ruthy, but I haven't heard of another production in the past or of another director. Most of the female directors in Israel have taken male cinematographers, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Daniela won the Ophir Award for the first time. It was for a female cinematographer. The same goes to our music composer, County Postel. And well, the 9 awards that were given out to Asia were all given out to women, except for the best film, which is also to a man, with Yoav Roy, the producer that produced along with Oid Zamir. So we had, and this was something that has never happened before, so many awards that were given out to female crew members.
Alena, anything to add on what it was like to work on such a female-dominated production, or nothing more? That's okay.
Actually, I really understood it only during the shooting, that, oh, it's only women around. It's really kind of funny to find out. I think especially maybe with Danielle, it really was kind of important choice because of the intimacy that we had. I think because the movie is really about to make hearts softer. I don't know, kind of, which was kind of target, I think, something that we can say inside each one of us. So in this special target, I think it was really a good thing that women was together to do it.
And also, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Alena.
No,
I just wanted to add that, I mean, I've worked on almost all male productions my entire career. So for me, it was a set without yelling and without bravado, and no offense, guys, but like just a little bit more calm, down to earth, you know, collaborative, not a lot of fluffing out feathers, and, you know, and so that's really refreshing, I think, because set is a really stressful place. And these 2 actresses had to do really these are hard roles to play. So they needed a setting, and you tell me if, you know, you felt this compared to other work, Alena, but they needed a setting that was chill, and not chaotic. And I hope that we were able to give you girls, that.
And one more thing I want to add, I really hope that there will be a time when this question will not be asked, no offense, that we will not have to ask, how did it feel to have all these women on set? Because no man gets asked that question. How did it feel to have so many men on set? Because most productions are full of men working on them. So I really hope there will be a time, and I'm hopeful that it will be soon, that it will not be a question and we will be able to be on a set with women and men, and just it will not be needed to ask.
Absolutely. Well, I think actually the success of films like yours is going to make that future a lot closer, because I think that the more films like yours enjoy success that they rightly deserve, the less it's going to be a question, and it's not going to be hopefully quite as unique or different. I'm going to turn to some audience questions now. A couple of people asked, including Nancy, what the specific illness the daughter has, which I think was kind of purposely left out, even though there were hints throughout about what it might be.
Right. From very early on, I knew I didn't want to make a film about the disease. I wanted to make a film about a relationship. So that's why it was purposely left out, because I didn't want it to be, oh, that film about. We shot the film knowing that Vika's disease is ALS. And we had doctors that were helping us out through the process of the pre-production and working with Shira on how she should look, and how the progression of the disease will be shown throughout the film. So we had a lot of help in that direction, but we again purposely decided not to have people know what disease it is. It could be anything that if they wanted to be.
A couple of questions from Dina Gold. One is for Alena. I don't actually know if this is for the character of Azir, for Alena herself. She just asks when either the character or yourself left Russia and moved to Israel.
So I left Russia at the age of 14, so it was 25, 26 years ago. Yeah, I still visit there because my parents live there in Belarus, more exactly. But yeah, actually, I'm already Israeli actress with a Russian speaker, but I'm completely Israeli.
And what about for the character? Did you have a conception, or was it scripted about how long ago she moved?
Yes, we talk about it, especially because of Vika, because if I already was with my daughter or not with my daughter, so it was kind of important detail. And also, it's also influencing someone arrived to Israel at age of 18 or 14. It's already very, very different, especially if it's already more in 2021. It's make you more immigrant most of the time for a more long time. So yes, the decision was that after I arrived to Israel, kind of 20 something.
Yeah, early 20s.
Mm-hmm. Which was one of the major waves of Russian immigration, I think, to Israel around that time, assuming that the story takes place in the present day. So another question sticking on the Russian, but a little bit different, also from Dina, about Shira Haas and whether she had to learn Russian or knew it already, or I'm wondering if she even knew it at all, because she didn't actually have that many lines in Russian. So how was her command of the language?
Didn't know it at all. She memorized her lines, and she memorized Alena's lines as well, so she could understand what she was saying to her when they were acting together. But yeah, it was very difficult for her as well to learn Russian. Difficult language.
Absolutely. The question now comes through from Ella and Mike, who were entering it earlier, getting towards the pills that come out at the end. And a few people had questions about that ending, of course, with the pills. And Ella and Mike say, when the pills come out at the end, you realize that there must be a lot more to it. which I'm not entirely sure what the intention there is, but could you talk a little bit more about how that ending came about? Was that always going to be part of the story, essentially the euthanasia and the freeing of the daughter from her condition, or did it hint at something else for you?
Well, I have to say that the script, I started writing the script when from the ending. A lot of times you start from different parts of the story when you start writing. You either have the scene or these characters, but for me, this was it. I mean, the last scene was the reason for writing. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted the end to be a mother that helps her daughter die. And this was in the base of what I was trying to say. But I remember, like, the writing process is very long, and it changes all the time when you write. I remember at first I tried to justify this action and tried to find the reason why she does it. And as I kept on writing, I felt like the justification for this kind of action does not need to be plot driven at all. It needs to be emotional. So I completely changed my thoughts about it. I mean, the script itself, it doesn't have a lot of the plot is not like there aren't there's not a lot of changes in the plot. It's not like a film that you can say, okay, this happens and then this happens and then this happens. No, but a lot happens between them that gets them to that part where a mother is able to help her daughter die. And people that have watched the film, and I've heard from quite a lot of people, most people don't look at it as something that is very it's a taboo, right? Euthanasia. And it's something that a lot of people are upset by. But I think when you reach the ending of the film, most people that watch it will not feel like it's a wrong thing that she's doing. They will feel like that is what they will do for a loved one. And this is what I wanted to say in the film. I wanted this relationship to reach a point where it wouldn't be a question. It would be an absolute truth. So hopefully whoever watched it now felt the same.
That certainly resonated with me. I had no qualms or moral dilemmas about what she did. It felt increasingly as the film went on that she would do anything at all for her daughter. I mean, the relationship with the caretaker at the end and hoping to get her some physical companionship, everything was just for the purpose of the daughter. There didn't seem to be any other agenda except for sort of a pure and unadulterated love. I'm going to take a question now from Beryl Nerman, who writes, it's a little bit of a longer question. She says, I'm a female screenwriter as a hobby who has a significant but not terminal disability. I'm currently working on my own mother, disabled daughter story, so I watch lots of films about people with disabilities. Besides Ms. Pribar's life experience with a close friend or relative who passed away, what were her other influences on the story? And specifically, did she or other people on this call know other people with disabilities or do research into them?
Well, during the writing, we did a lot of research and met with people who had ALS and with nurses and doctors and a lot of people that have dealt with this sort of situation. So we did research it. For me, most of the film, I mean, it is through the eyes of Asia, who is a caretaker. And that is the way the film is sort of unravels. Of course, Vika is a very dominant character, but I wrote it from that perspective, which was for me interesting because it was not only a film about, again, a disease or dying young, but about motherhood and about what it means to be a mother. Because a lot of times we have this image of women that become mothers straight away. They give birth and they become mothers. And I think it's I mean, for me, and I'm a young mother myself at the moment. I mean, I had my baby boy, my eldest, 3 years ago. So I'm still learning as it goes. And I have to say, it's not something that comes naturally at all for me. I have to learn it every day. I have to change myself to be a better mother and to think about it and to really sink deep into it every time over and over again, because it changes all the time. So I think it's the same in the film. This is a mother that is trying to do her best, and every time she changes in order to find the next best thing she can do for her daughter. And was my emphasis on the film. And of course, it deals with a lot of subjects, which I tried to cover in research. Um, but I come from a certain perspective, and that's where I write, and that's where I direct from.
Absolutely. Another question, this one comes from Gail Chalou. She says, both women were so strong, but they also spurned help and connections when it was offered. They did not share their problems with others. Did you see this as being related to their being Russians or immigrants, or more so their life stories, not necessarily their cultural backgrounds?
For me, it was for sure.
Go ahead.
I have to
I
say,
just want to say, for me, it was for sure it was a Russian way of life. You know, I say it's completely because it's Russian and culture is completely part of it. But I believe because it was one of the reasons to choose Russian immigrants. It was because of working about their relationships and how to become closer and closer, and I don't know, something that I think we already said about it. It's really the Russian people that they really cold in the beginning, but then if you go on into it, so it's finally because completely into it, and it's really movie we really see it, and it really happened to this specific script very much.
I mean, I see how it can relate to Russian people, but I'm sure there are Russians that are completely different, of course. I mean, it relates to me in the way I see people. I think in a lot of ways, when you write about yourself. And this is not to say that this is a biographical story by any means. It isn't, but there are parts of me in it, and parts of my family, and parts of my friends. And I mean, on one hand, I'm an open person, and I can talk about the film right now in front of you, and that's fine. But in other ways, I will not share my problems very easily, and I do keep things to myself, and I'm a very private person when it comes to things that really matter to me. And I think Asya, in a way, is the same. She can talk about her problems with a stranger, and she can sometimes even ask for help. But there is something that is, she doesn't break down easily. She's very strong, and she keeps being strong because she also has no choice. And she knows that if she falls apart, no one will be there to pick up the pieces. And I'm not sure that's because of where she comes from. I think it's just her life and the way she deals with it. I mean, we're all different people. We deal with extreme situations in different ways, but this is just another way, and a specific way for us to deal with the situation.
So speaking of that, I wanted to turn a little bit to Alena to share about the acting craft, which Ruthy just mentioned about how she's open talking about the film, but it, like any of us, perhaps doesn't always bear her feelings on her chest or on her sleeve. For acting, it's an incredibly vulnerable enterprise. You generally have to make it personal. You have to put yourself out there. And I'm curious if you could give us a little bit of insight, Alena, into your preparation, and also, despite moments of beauty and optimism in the film, there are a lot of heavy messages, a lot of dark moments, and especially that last scene. How did you prepare, and how did you not go home a total wreck afterwards, dealing with this day in and day out?
All right. Now about taking home, I think I did took it home, but especially now to this specific day, I know what since we worked, and I know which feeling I left in my heart, and then maybe the evening or night, I really can give myself to be in it a little bit more and to make some transformation of it, just not to stay it with me for too long after after the movie. But, so it was completely understanding that it does have had an influence on me for sure. Um, about preparation, it was understood. I understood from the beginning. It's really going to be kind of transformation that I will receive in this movie, and in some way, it's kind of feeling like a Czech play, shachmat,
Chess.
chess, yes, chess play that. Because because it's shooting is not chronicle, so you really kind of build your own feelings, kind of chart, I don't know, and you know that can kind of calculate all the time this what specific it was here and what specific it was there, and with all this calculating for me was really important. To still to make it alive, I really have receive input really love to receive inputs, just really even before a 1 to 3 action, because I really kind of looking around, I'm looking at myself, what the mood I have, I'm looking at my partner to see what the mood she had. Sometimes maybe can ask something just to give some answer, and all these little inputs, and they really receive me to make it more alive, kind of okay, I have the program, I have some plan, but to make it full of life, where you have so using all these inputs in this special moment. So this way, and I think a lot of was really with working with Daniella, maybe not so strict, but really all the time hear what she's saying, what the frame that you're gonna make, or what how big this frame, how intimate. So for me, it's also very important just to know how and how many details to enter. It's something more bigger. It's enough to make it with eyes, or I have to use my hands. Kind of. This technical moments is very very important too.
It's interesting. Danielle, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I think we very often hear about the director-actor relationship, but not perhaps as much about cinematographer-actor. So I'd love to hear from your perspective what that relationship was like on set.
I personally love actors, and so I love working with directors. Some directors don't want you to speak to the actors, but Ruthy is not one of those directors, and so I love, I feel like at the end of the day, I always would set up a shot and we'd have a stand-in, and I'd be like, is it such a good shot? I don't know. I would have this moment, and then, one of the actresses would come in and the shot was suddenly, gorgeous and perfect, and I didn't have to do anything. And so I think it was just understanding where their bodies and their faces needed to be. Because as I said, this isn't an action movie. This is a movie about these two women. And so every frame, all of the design, all of the geometry, it's all around these very human bodies, bodies and faces, And so in some films, you're not very specific about marks. You're not very specific about even informing the actor. Some films you're handheld, you're kind of going with the actor. But in this film, there really had to be a choreography between us because the frames were so set, that both actresses needed to know the size and where to stop and, have their marks. And I even like sometimes, I mean, this is a no-no on some sets, but I like sometimes to even show them playback of shots that I really like, because I think it really inspires them to also see how effective they are. Like Alena is saying, just with the eyes or just with one hand motion, you know, it can inform, you know, choices for future takes.
So sticking with you, Danielle, there's a question that came in from Sandra Huckster, who says that to her, when the daughter suffered severe physical symptoms, the photography got to be hazy or dreamlike. Can you talk about some of the decisions in that regard?
Yeah, well, that goes back to what we were talking about in the story earlier, that as the daughter gets sicker, the relationship between mother and daughter improve. And so this sense of dreaminess, it's not like, oh, she's passing into death, as much as there's this idyllic mother-daughter relationship that never existed is finally come to fruition. And you know, the haziness, that's what happens when you shoot with the light flaring into the camera. Basically, you know, we shot against a window. So it's also technical, but it also is to give this sense that there is some peace to this final moment. There is something soothing to the eyes, because this relationship has kind of come full circle. And all of the conflict of the relationship, which is earlier in the movie, which you can feel a lot of frames with conflict of, you know, the two women in the kitchen in squares, their backs turned to each other. There's a lot of frames about conflict, but these hazy moments are about the togetherness, and there's something about haze that's organic, and it just it feels more emotional. It feels less the relationship feels less frayed, and so it was really just about connecting with the story. It wasn't about, you know, being like, oh, this looks beautiful. And sometimes in some movies you can say, oh, this just looks beautiful, so I'll do it. But I think in the best films, you do things because they're connecting with the story, and the changes you're making in the shooting are also connecting with the changes that the characters are having.
It definitely felt to me like there was an intent behind the visual style. None of it felt, I think you said earlier, just ruffling the feathers or being a peacock or anything along those lines. There definitely seemed to be a conscious intent, which was certainly much appreciated. We're getting towards the end, but we'll have time for a couple more questions. Somebody writes in about the role of the caretaker and why it was decided that they should be an Israeli Arab. This one, Ruthy, you can probably take.
Yeah. Okay. So when I wrote the part of Gabi, he was not written as an Arab. He was written as a young man who had this good connection with us in the hospital, and then had a very quick bond with Vika at home. And he needed to be like manly enough for her to fall for, but also very gentle and sweet and nurturing, and not sleazy at all, because it would be impossible for him to be in that position and to sort of look at Vika in the wrong way. So we were just looking for the right person for the role for a very long time. I have to say, this was one of the longest casting for the role of Gabi. And we looked for a lot of young men, and the majority of them were not Arab. I have to say that in a lot of the hospital tours that we took, we just saw so many young Arab men that were working as nursing aides. And so it made a lot of sense for him to be Arab, because this is just the reality. So we opened the cast up for Arab actors. And then Tamir Mula came along. And I have to say, the minute he came into the room, I was just like, who is this guy? Because I've never seen him before. He wasn't acting. He did like a very small role in Fauda, and that was it. So I've never seen him. And I was just, the way he looked and the way he held himself and everything. And he just walked into the room, and my casting director looked at him and she asked, what's that tattoo that you have on your hand? And he said, oh, that's a lotus flower. And then he said, I just love flowers. And I fell in love with this guy. And I just put that sentence into the script because it made so much sense. This was Gabi for me. And that's how it also, the sentence about is Gabi an Arab name, that came into the script because he was written as Gabi, and Gabi is not an Arab name. And I asked Tamir Mula, the actor, I asked him, do you know if Gabi can be an Arab name? And then he said, yeah, it's a shortcut for Jabir. And I was like, oh, good. I'll put that in the script as well. So this is talking about Gabi, but I will say this is also about the way I treat the script. Once we go to shooting, I will hardly change anything in the script unless something is really not working. But through casting and through rehearsals, a lot of things change in the script because when you put actors into their roles, it just changes the way you see the film. And I like making these changes because they seem so organic by the end. And when he says that sentence about how he loves flowers, you believe him because he really does love flowers, and it just suits his character so much.
That's great. We have a question from Judy Myers in Baltimore, again, a little bit long. She says that as a nurse, she was concerned that Asia risks her license, career, and also jail time by stockpiling the pills. She wants to know if she stole them from the hospital. And then she continues to say, I think anyone who has home care experience caring for severely ill patients knows that death often occurs accidentally when family members try to help their loved ones control pain, for example. If it's the right pill, 1 or 2 would have been enough. The stockpiling was a shock to a fellow nurse. She wonders if you can comment on that.
Can I answer these questions? Because I really asked Ruthy a lot about this stuff, about these special details. It was really important for me how it can be, what the logic, how it really works, and when we make a visit, when we visit hospitals to make the research for the roles, so it also was one of my questions to the staff. If you take some the dangerous pills, how it really works, when we're signing like this. So I built my inner story that I did the stolen. The pills were stolen from the hospital, and it's also, I have this relationship with this old man in the hospital that really suffer from pains that we speak about. So my inner explanation was that I took the pills from him. I don't know if even Ruthy said it to you, but it was my inner explanation. So I really stole it from this man, from my daughter. And I also believe that, yeah, so it was my personal secret that no one knows. Also this thing with this task when he coming to this room and put hand on my shoulder. For me, it was exactly the moment when I'm stolen, because that's why I was so frightened, because I was concentrated in something from a personal secret. So maybe I really surprised even you to know.
Rudy, how does that square with your interpretation?
Well, I didn't think about us stealing from a specific patient, but we did know that she was taking it from the hospital and where she works, and it was part of the reason for her to be a nurse in the hospital in the first place. Why I wrote her this way, and of course, it's a questionable act, and you can say, okay, she stole these medications, and of course, she's not supposed to. But again, I think most people will not stop to think about this specifically. Some will, especially if they work in this line of work. It makes sense. So again, of course, it's a moral question if she should have done that, and it's also a question what will happen afterwards, and if she will get caught, and if she will be jailed. Personally, if you ask me, I think she will find a way to sort of not get jailed. I mean, just by saying Vico's having trouble breathing, she called, but then, I mean, I don't think in Israel they would hurry to do like an autopsy after death. I mean, I this is going into a very technical thing. I think what I want people to come out of the film with is something else. It's something again about the hope of really living up to your to live your life to the fullest and to live your love to the fullest in a way. And also, what I do want people to get out is thinking about Asya and how she's still a very young woman and how she still has a future ahead of her and how she even might be someday pregnant again. I mean, she's still young. She can do that. She can have a new family, but she will always remain this mother to a daughter. This is never going to change. And the bond that she shared with Vika, that is not going to change also. And this is what I intended viewers to go out with from the film.
I want to add something as well, if you don't mind, Ruthie, is that when my reading of the script was also that there's this expectation as mothers that we should sacrifice everything for our children. And here was a mother in the script who it felt had her own kind of independent life and didn't necessarily sacrifice everything. But by the end of the script, she did become the mother that, you know, sacrifices everything. And so, yeah, she stole those pills from the hospital, but that didn't matter to her. What mattered to her was that her daughter wouldn't suffer. You know, she at the beginning of the movie, she was going out to bars and kind of bickering with her daughter, and she was more into herself. And by the end, she was almost, because she did a completely selfless act that was really hard for her to do and would be, I mean, I'm a new mother myself, and I can say I can't even imagine how selfless you have to be to do that to your own child for their well-being. I mean, it's the worst thing you could ever have to encounter. And so I think that the stealing of the pills is also a testament to how much she changes as a character.
Absolutely.
Right.
We're getting near time here, so I wanted to give each of our panelists an opportunity just to say what's next for them in terms of any projects that are coming up or what's next for the film. Obviously, we're all crossing our fingers for the Oscars and future shows, but we'll start with Daniela. If you're working on any projects you want to let us know about.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to really talk about the specifics of the project, but I will be going to Colombia for 6 months with my husband and my 8-month-old baby for a TV show, and during COVID, so it's a little bit stressful, but I'm hoping by the time I go, there's either a vaccine or, you know, we're just very lucky. So that's kind of in my near future, and hopefully sooner rather than later, I can talk about what it actually is that I'm doing.
All right, we'll look forward to that. And Alena, what's on the docket for you?
For me, actually, I really hope for some projects in Russians and in Russian language and with Russian production maybe. So at this moment, I may be working about this connection. Actually, I don't have something specific to say, but that's the way that I would like that will happen.
Great. Well, we'll hold that for it. It's also obviously a curious moment with COVID being a challenge in all kinds of ways, as Danielle alluded to, for productions. So it's not a normal production cycle or an exhibition cycle by any stretch. And Ruthy, what's next for this film and for yourself if you have other projects heading our way?
Well, for the film, we're hoping it gets released. I mean, it's now released in theaters in the UK, actually, which is incredible. But in Israel, it's going to take a while. We think probably around April or May for like a full release in theaters, because right now the movie theaters have been closed since March. So it's been a difficult time. Asya has been traveling quite well in festivals worldwide, but I have not been able to go on any festival whatsoever because of the situation. So hopefully it will keep on going well and people will watch the film and love it and go to the theaters to watch it. As for other projects, I have one script that is now being financed. Hopefully we'll be able to shoot it soon in Israel. And there's another project in the US that I'm writing in the moment. So hopefully that will happen too. And who knows? Hopefully things will just start happening because the world is paused in the moment. So I'm optimistic.
Good. That's it's a nice note to leave it on. I think we're all optimistic and looking forward to a future that's no longer so far away. I want to really thank all three of you, Daniella, Ruthy, and Alena, for joining us. Thank you so much. Hopefully we will see you physically and in big theaters in DC at some point soon. In the meantime, the best of luck with the film and your upcoming projects and travels. Thank you so much. Have a great day. And thank you to the audience for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.